Your microphone was on.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Pledge of the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Attendance, Sean.
Board Member Cole? Here. Board Member Dean?
Here.
Board Member Kimball?
Here.
Chairman Sirianni?
Here.
Board Member Weiss?
Here.
Any public comments, Sean?
None this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Any correspondence?
The only
Oh,
item
wait. Yes, correspondence.
The only item in the packet is a thank you note from the Niagara Falls City School District Superintendent, who expresses his appreciation for efforts by the outside maintenance crew to clear hydrants after some unusually bad weather.
Thank you. Prior meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to go through them? And is there a motion to accept them?
Motion to accept.
Jim Dean, is there a second?
Second.
Renee Kimball? Any discussion on them? Roll call?
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yes.
Chairman Sirianni?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Executive Director and General Counsel, Sean Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, I would just like to focus on reviewing the current status of the preliminary engineering report. Please give me just a moment to get the PowerPoint presentation pulled up on Zoom. All right, the presentation is now on the screen. So this is an update on the preliminary engineering report that we are required to submit to the DEC pursuant to an order on consent. The purpose of the preliminary engineering report is to identify upgrades required to comply with the order on consent and to meet new requirements in the draft speedies permit for the wastewater treatment plant. As a little background, the plant is in the midst of a full permit rewrite, the first in quite a few years, and it's added a number of new parameters, including removal of biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD, for which our wastewater treatment plant was never designed because it was thought at the time of construction in the 1970s, or design and construction in the 1970s, that there was no biological process that could survive the high-strength wastewater that was being received at that time. In addition, the main focus of the order is on turbidity and visible contrast at our outfall in the lower Niagara River. So in addition to the BOD parameter that I mentioned, there are a number of new parameters in the draft speedies permit or tighter limits for certain existing parameters. And the goal was to design a plant that could reliably meet the current or the draft permit requirements, as well as future regulatory requirements. We were looking to minimize capital costs, in part by reusing our existing wastewater treatment facility, to which all of the sewers in the city are already routed. Reusing the facility eliminates substantial costs. We hoped to find a plan that would limit the increase in operation and maintenance costs associated with the new equipment or processes. And we are looking to deliver upgrades that are flexible and not too difficult to operate. So in order to get to the point where we have a preliminary engineering report, the board authorized retention of Hazen and Sawyer. The work included a review of existing studies. There's been a number of relevant studies performed over the years, bits and pieces of which were relevant to the preliminary engineering report. The most recent and probably the most relevant is the 2019 Biological Treatability Study by AECOM, which was performed which reflected studies and plant scale testing done in 2018 to 2019. Among the technologies tested at that time were the moving bed bioreactor, or MBBR, that'll be discussed in a little more detail in a moment. Hazen and Sawyer also reviewed the plant processes and performance data, especially data developed since 2018. Since 2018, the plant has operated in a remarkably good fashion for its age and the condition of the equipment. We've had some consultants who've helped us really optimize how effectively and efficiently the plant operates, and that has greatly increased our compliance with our existing wastewater permit. Part of the work included evaluating major plant components to identify what can be reused in a new treatment process, but also importantly, what needs to be replaced in order to have a wastewater treatment plant that doesn't need major capital investment for a reasonable period of time after these improvements are constructed. The work included screening various treatment technologies and developing potential alternatives, and some bench scale testing of technologies was completed in order to confirm that some were useful and that definitively ruled out other technologies such as UV based on the characteristics of our wastewater, UV for disinfection. So in evaluating the various alternatives, we weighted certain criteria in order to come up with a recommendation. So those included economic factors, capital and operations and maintenance costs. So capital being the initial cost of construction, operation and maintenance, the ongoing year-to-year costs. Operability, so the number of instruments and the number of basins were sort of a proxy for that, how complicated the plant is. Technical, so flexibility for the future. As we'll discuss with the MBBR, there's a lot of flexibility because you can increase the density of the media in the tanks in order to treat a greater volume of wastewater. And then siting. So although it seems like we have a sprawling campus at the wastewater treatment plant, it's actually not all that large for certain types of treatment technologies. There are certain technologies that would be, have large, almost lagoon-like structures. So we don't have an unlimited amount of space. And the space that we do have, there is the gorge force main, which is a 30-inch pressurized main going into the plant, and other utilities. So it was important to find a way to site this on the existing property and to do so comfortably. So the total of all those had a weight of 100%. And I will just note for the board that all of this information that I'm reviewing is from the preliminary engineering report. I've just sort of distilled it down into a brief presentation for the board and for the public in attendance. So ultimately, the recommendation is moving bed biofilm reactor, or MBBR, with disc filters following. So MBBR are aerated tanks that are filled with a plastic type media. The media has a lot of surface area and it's covered in a naturally growing biofilm. So of course, we're going to seed that biofilm. We're going to get bugs or bacteria from other wastewater treatment plants in order to promote that growth. But ultimately, it persists on its own. It's a naturally growing biofilm that consumes or converts pollutants. And then in that process, while a lot of what is consumed or converted does not have to be disposed of, there is biofilm and suspended solids that slough or sheet off, and those are removed further down the process in the disc filters that would also be built. Importantly, and not in the slides, we plan to keep the carbon that currently exists as our secondary treatment process at the wastewater treatment plant. The carbon will become a tertiary or polishing step in the treatment process. We will have the moving bed biofilm reactor and disc filters as the secondary treatment, it's called. So primary treatment is settling out the solids. Secondary treatment is actually treating the resulting wastewater or the primary effluent, as it's called. And then we're going to have a tertiary step in the carbon. The reason why we're retaining carbon are several, but one of the most important is we need it in order to continue to meet the extremely low permit limits for things like PCBs, for future dieldrin and other pesticide type constituents that are not removed very effectively with MBBRs, but which are unfortunately characteristic in our wastewater, likely because the groundwater is contaminated from prior industrial sites and things like that. So what ultimately will be constructed is going to be a very flexible, very resilient plant with the ability to treat anything that we reasonably can expect is going to come down the line in the future. So here is a slide that I presented a couple of months ago to the board after our site visits at SUNY Morrisville and Honey Eye Falls. They're examples of the filter media, the center pictures that HDPE or, plastic type media that has a lot of surface area on which the biofilm grows. To the left is an example of the aerated tank that we will have, I believe, 6 of constructed in the front of the wastewater plant, and I'll show a diagram of what that'll look like in the future. And then an example of disc filters. These are smaller than the units that we're likely to have installed, but they are a good example. Essentially, they catch the solids that come off the MVBR media, which is then flushed and sent back to the primary clarifiers so it can be removed with other solids that settle out of the wastewater. The effluent would then travel from the disc filters to the carbon beds. Here are a couple photographs from the report, clean filter media. There's different types. I think the top left is the one that we saw previously, and then a picture of an empty MBBR tank. They're relatively simple, which is one of the selling points or one of the reasons why this technology is preferred as an alternative. The sort of hoses or lines, and the lines on the bottom of the tank, those are for aeration. That's the bubbles that need to be continually pumped in through blowers in order to keep the media discs moving and the wastewater circulating. Here is another image from the draft PER that was sent to the board, just showing the disc filters more akin to the size that would be installed at our plant. And here, as I mentioned, is a preliminary site plan. The 2 arrows point to essentially what's new, what is going to be built, and well, I guess the structure to the top as well, which is an influent structure. So the plan is for the very dilute wastewater that comes through the gorge force main to go directly into the MBBR reactors. There are not substantial solids in that wastewater, so it does not need to go to the primary clarifiers to settle out solids. There's nothing to settle out. So that'll go directly into the MBBR reactors. The rest of the influent will still go into the primary clarifiers, and then the primary effluent will go to those MBBR reactors after traveling through the reactors. And so that shows 4 independent trains of 2 reactors each. And there's also room for pumps and things like that are going to be required. It'll go into that disc filter building that is shown there. We had examined whether placing those disc filters in sedimentation basin 1, so the long basin to the left, might be practicable. And the conclusion is that a new building, while it does increase construction costs somewhat, is definitely preferable because it'll allow better access to the equipment. It's more predictable. There's a lot of unknowns in trying to reuse the 1970s sedimentation basins. And plus, having additional basins allows us better wet weather operating. So we can attenuate really high flows that would be too high to push through the secondary and tertiary treatment. As we do now, we use a couple of basins for that purpose. We fill them up, and it can shave off some flow before we start having a concern about overflowing. So we're able to treat more wastewater in wet weather than ever before with our current mode of operation, and that should increase with the availability of additional sedimentation basins, because we'll only need to have 2 really for the primary clarification. Once the gorge pump station influent is routed directly to the MBBR, 2 should be enough for the primary settling. So estimated cost, of course, the biggest issue here is the cost of these improvements. We are still working on refining some estimates that are being updated based on a workshop held last week at which Board Member Cole was in attendance for the full 6 hours. The current estimate in the draft that the board reviewed with escalated based on a June 2029 construction start is $258 million. Really, the changes that are underway are not going to substantially, materially change that number. So we are looking at a very large, very costly project that in the final PER will be broken down into its various cost components. So next steps. The immediate deadline is submission of the preliminary engineering report by the deadline of February 28th. We intend to do so on Friday the 27th rather than wait till the very last moment. And then we have to wait for DEC comments or approval. Once that approval is issued, which could take months, it's really not a clear time frame. It's going to take as long as it takes them to review, and I expect we'll likely have meetings with DEC to discuss, elements of the report. Once DEC does issue its approval, we have 6 months to issue a request for proposals for engineering design services. So that'll be selection of another, well, I'm sure Hazen will be a potential proposer, but it may be a different engineering firm. we'll do an RFP for the full design work and the construction administration and supervision. That'll be a much larger contract based on the size and scope of the design. 18 months is allowed in the order on consent for design, and then 4 years for construction once design is complete. In the meantime, and the board likely will see a proposal, possibly a change order to Hazen and Sawyer's existing contract. The concept that we're still evaluating is whether the plant can be derated. So the plant reduced from its current flow rating of 48 million gallons per day to something closer to the current average flows of, which are about 24 million gallons per day. So we wouldn't go right to 24. You don't want to be at your average flow. You want the plant rated for more, but perhaps there's an opportunity to rate the plant something like 35 million gallons per day. In order to do that, it's necessary to develop a detailed hydraulic profile and analysis to understand in wet weather how flows go through the plant. And that will include installation of essentially just ultrasonic level sensors at a number of points throughout the plant to determine how, what those actual flows are looking like on a minute by minute basis. If it's possible to lower the average flows, that's going to be some discussion with the DEC, certainly, but it could mean possible savings of 10 to 15%, which, while that doesn't seem like a large number, given the overall $250 million cost of the project, that could be significant. And the savings would be in smaller or fewer basins, so less concrete, less units, potentially smaller or fewer pumps, things like that. We want to get this detailed hydraulic profile and analysis done, which is just a few month effort probably, but we're going to commence it now so that information is ready when the clock starts to run on our detailed design. We want to be ready and also just to know whether this is a feasible concept. Otherwise, once this preliminary engineering report is submitted, we await DEC comments or approval. We're going to, in the coming weeks, update our capital plan and start doing projections of the cost of funding this project with existing grant sources and to demonstrate the impact on ratepayers if this project does not receive substantial funding from the state or federal government. We're going to look at things like affordability benchmarking, which EPA has some guidelines on what's, affordability for water and wastewater services that will include. We're going to begin educating stakeholders from industry and others, including elected officials. And we're going to, now that we have a final preliminary engineering report that we're committed to pursuing with the order on consent, we're going to be in a position to aggressively pursue funding at the state and federal levels with the assistance of the consultant that the board approved, E3 Communications. So that is, in a very abbreviated and quick fashion, a high-level overview of where we stand on the preliminary engineering report and the recommendation. There's a lot more detail certainly in the draft preliminary engineering report, but I'm very happy to answer any questions that immediately come to mind to the extent I'm able to.
You mentioned possibility of lowering to maybe 35 million gallons. If you lowered it, would that affect when we get too much water? Could that hurt that system?
That's all a factor that needs to be evaluated. We probably still would want the capacity to treat. Right now, our wet weather operating plan requires us to treat peaking flows up to 85 million gallons. Perhaps Mr. Williamson, Doug, do you recall? Right. Yeah, 85 million gallons. We probably could maintain that ability, but our overall capacity on a day-to-day basis, so outside of wet weather, would shrink from 48 million gallons to a number. Again, 35 is just a number sort of pulled at random, but it's a plausible number. So we just wouldn't have to have the capacity for that day in and day out treatment. We'd still need to be able, I don't think DEC would approve us reducing the amount of wet weather flow that we treat, and nor would we want to.
So then that number might stay the same, but the reason to do it is possibly lower the construction costs.
Correct. Yep. Smaller,
Okay.
less equipment could be more efficient.
Now, with all this and the engineers, are we comfortable with this type of system? I mean, is there another system that maybe is a little more costly, but a better system? And does this system get us away from dumping $1 million a year from modern?
So unfortunately, solids production will increase slightly, just a little, not a lot. Chemical costs should go down in terms of at least the disinfectant, the sodium hypochlorite that historically has been a huge part of our budget. Of course, since September, when the Cascades plant shut, we've seen a substantial reduction in sodium hypochlorite usage, but we'll reliably have a far smaller budget line for sodium hypochlorite for disinfection. Other chemicals will probably also be reduced somewhat as well, which can be a substantial savings. Energy use probably will increase slightly because of all those blowers they're going to have to run and another set of pumps. I've already had a great conversation with our NIPA account rep about the possibility of trying to get an additional low-cost power allocation based on all the jobs that our plant not necessarily is going to create when it's upgraded, but continue to support. There's a lot of work left to do there too, but energy, we have a better chance of getting a better rate on. In terms of the sludge production, one thing that Hazen and Sawyer is looking at, it's not required to be part of the preliminary engineering report, but we included it in the scope of work for our request for proposals, is different options to upgrade our sludge handling in order to lower our disposal costs. They have not yet delivered it because the focus is on the PER, which has a deadline for a deliverable, but we are expecting a technical memo on solids handling that will cover things like the cost, or at least some estimates of the cost to upgrade the conveyor system that we have. One, to just address an older conveyor system, but also so it can load larger containers. Right now, we're limited to loading just luggers, which can only hold about 11 tons. If we could load roll-offs, we would expand the number of firms that potentially could haul the waste. Right now, only Modern seems to have the luggers that we need for the hauling, and there would be fewer trips. We've seen the biggest increase in our most recent bid price was in the hauling cost. The labor end of things is now $450 a trip to the landfill. So if we could cut the number of trips in half, it would result in substantial savings over time. We're also looking at different options for sludge dryers, which would probably be a separate project, not necessarily on any different time frame, but a separate project for which we'd probably submit a separate grant application and hopefully get some money toward, if we were to determine that the cost benefit of a dryer is there. In the past, when those have been evaluated here, the payback period was just too long, but that may have changed.
Okay. Thanks, Sean.
So was there a comparison with the other systems? I mean, this is the MBBR, and so but did you also compare the operational costs? I mean, did that preliminary engineering report have that?
Yes.
in
So
there?
for
So, I mean,
operation costs,
this rose to the top compared to overall.
yeah, the other, and so in terms of the operability of the system, MBBR is probably, I don't think the right word is simple, but the least complicated system that we're going to find. It scored best. It has the fewest required instruments. The basins are relatively simple. They're concrete rectangles with, aeration tubes. Some of the other options were a lot more complicated in terms of management and, picky about let's say the chemistry. In the preliminary engineering report, the other alternative that was shortlisted based on it being likely to be effective for treating our waste was a biologically active filter, and that the cost is broken down in the draft PER. That'll be updated. Each of the other technologies that were reviewed or evaluated are also summarized in the preliminary engineering report. One of the things that we asked Hazen and Sawyer to do was to put a little more detail into the narrative section of the preliminary engineering report on why those technologies were, determined to be inappropriate or infeasible. Right now it's there, but it's a little superficial. It'd just be nice to have a little more substance as to why different technologies were evaluated and rejected.
So usually one of the well, common things I hear is that as soon as you're done building a wastewater treatment plant or a water treatment, that it's usually, you know, under capacity, you know, by the time you're done. So is it wise to really look at derating how much we can produce? I mean, is that something that is going to be entered into this additional study that you're talking about by Hazen and Sawyer? Or is it just looking at how much we can save?
No, we'll make sure that if derating is pursued, that it's adequate for the need. We've been pretty consistent at 23 to 24 million gallons a day, average flows for years now. The plant, when designed in the early 1970s, there was a much larger population, but also far more industrial users. So they built it with growth in mind. Rick Roll, who's retired water board employee, who's still working here as a temporary employee, once gave me a graph from one of the studies involved in development of the existing wastewater treatment plant that had these very rosy projections of ever increasing population. So the 48 MGD plant is almost certainly oversized, and there's no reasonable expectation that there's going to be extreme growth that often impacts other wastewater treatment plants. You know, there's not likely to be too many massive subdivisions and things like that increase sewer usage.
And so you said derate from 48 MGD, and I know you said it, but what are we at right now?
24 right now is our
annual?
average flow. We would not want to go that low. There's no benefit to be gained from, you know, potentially being at the very margins of what you can do. But some higher number, you know, maybe 34, 35, if it makes a substantial difference. If it's $100,000 savings to go from, you know, if we can only go to 40 and it's, you know, no meaningful savings, there's no utility in derating.
I'm having a hard time seeing 10, 15% being reasonable, just.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much we're gonna spend, you know, to find this out, but if they're saying only a 10 to 15% by going down to 24 million gallons per day.
I'd like to add to that, Sean, real quick. I've been, like Sean said, sitting in a lot of these sessions, just overseeing on the board's behalf. Sean's explanation is extremely thorough, but yeah, I think all of us were hoping to see a bigger savings, because the derating process, or, you know, lowering the volume is kind of the number one cost savings factor for us, right? But which is why it was even explored. I think we were all hoping to see that it would make a bigger, I know I was, agreeing with the point, hoping to see that it saved us a lot more money. But it's just something we continue to explore as we move forward.
Yeah, I think that the data collection and analysis that's necessary to know if the hydraulics of the plant would support derating, and I haven't seen any numbers, I'm speculating, is going to be a $50,000 to $70,000 effort at most. But a 10 or 15% savings on the current estimated construction costs is 20 or 30 million. And would be well worth the additional effort associated, I think.
Yeah, looking into it's more worth it. I agree. I think, Jim, I think it's ultimately, when we get to this point, it's going to come down to how much money we can raise. I mean, the state, the federal government's largely, you know, the ones making this happen eventually, when it does happen. One thing that relevant to the derating that I think Hazen and Sawyer was the ones in our last meeting that mentioned it. It's kind of anecdotal, but it stuck out with me. Sean, didn't they say that typically when they're designing new plants or redesigning an old plant like ours, it's often because of population growth. In our case, it's somewhat unique. You have a new plant that's, you know, roughly the same, in the ballpark of the same cost as they would build it in a different city, but with a declining population. So our and declining population both in residents and industry, like Sean pointed out. So again, at the moment, it's kind of anecdotal, but it was one of the reasons we considered looking at reducing the amount of volume we could treat it at one time, because you know, we're gonna need to, we have a big asking for, you know, in the neighborhood of 300 mil or 258 mil. So just something to keep in mind. And one of the things they pointed out was the uniqueness of our situation, needing to build something that's expensive anywhere else, but usually everybody else doing because their population's growing. Ours is just aging infrastructure.
And Board Member Coles, to that point, so usually when there's a plant upgrade in the nature of this sort of upgraded, it's serving additional customers. You're expanding your rate base, and that helps pay for the cost of the upgrades.
Yeah.
Here, we don't have that. We don't have a growing user population, nor are we likely to. Which is all the more reason why we need state and federal assistance to make this project affordable.
So will the cost estimate get more refined during the? Is it gonna get revisited other than just this preliminary engineering report?
So it'll be refined based on some of the feedback from the meeting last week. The next time the cost estimate will become more detailed is during the next design phase, the detailed design phase. That'll be subject to an RFP after the DEC approves the report.
If it changes, it's not ready by March. That's roughly what we're looking at, that number, that range. It could go up, of course, you know. I think they said plus or minus, but the minus, you know, meaning if it came in under, which it's not gonna come in under, but if
Public
it came in
cost
under, it was like 10%. If it came in over, it was like up to 30% more. Like, okay,
Well,
but
public projects always have a tendency to
exactly,
go
don't
up.
they? They do tend to do that, but it is, like Sean just underscored, it is a unique set of circumstances that we're approaching, you know, the need for new infrastructure, the uniqueness of the city and our infrastructure being, you know, on an international border, tourism, and all of the other factors that are unique to us, and the declining population, it means less ratepayers, right? Everything we're dealing with is I think very unique compared to other plant builds.
Yes, and I will say that we're not lowballing this number. We're being conservative, and we've encouraged Hazen and Sawyer to be conservative because we want the final project cost to come in at or below the estimate. But we don't want to ask for funding based on an overly rosy projection, an overly optimistic projection. We want to ask for what we think it's going to cost,
Mhm.
and hopefully with a little bit of wiggle room.
The only concern I have, obviously, like everyone else, economic, but are we making sure, and you don't have to answer this, we're putting the right system in place? That's looking at long-term waste, looking at cost, looking at future technology. Are we making the right decision on a particular thing that we may put an RFP out? But other than that, Renee or Dan, do you have any questions?
Well, Rick, I tend to agree with you on this. I'm not sure this is the right system. I don't know if in fact, from what Sean, what you said, that the engineers provided us with enough, I guess, information so that we can make adequate comparisons to select the appropriate system. I think that they probably should have done more in that area. So I'm not comfortable with this. I'm just not.
While the report, like I said, it was a little, the narrative was sort of brief. I think with the goal of readability, and because, you know, the alternatives that were rejected are, you know, not nearly as relevant as the two alternatives that were, you know, really ultimately screened for detailed analysis. There is data to back up, you know, other treatment technologies not being effective or, you know, being much more costly or impractical for application here.
Okay, well, why don't we have that information?
Well, I mean, there's some of it's going to be difficult to interpret, but I mean, we have, as I said, I've asked that they include a bit more detail in the preliminary engineering report in the revisions that they're working on right now.
Is Hayes and Sawyer, are they the experts to determine what we need?
Yes,
Um, so we're several years out, but we have to move quickly, but is it possible to get them over here to ask a few questions like that?
certainly. Yes, I didn't ask them to be present, although I certainly can. And I will also note that we asked AECom, particularly John Goddard, to do a peer review of this preliminary engineering report. Dr. Goddard and AECom had lots of great comments, but they are in agreement that the technology and the plan should work. They're of course hoping that they're going to get the detailed design work. So they certainly wouldn't say that about any plant that they didn't think was the right solution.
Yeah,
And
So will the-
MBBR was one of the concepts in their initial proposal.
So will the
too.
final have the section for the peer review?
No, that's not part of the preliminary engineering report. So we're submitting a report that has to meet a certain outline required by the DEC and EFC. The peer review is not done in a terribly formal manner, and they submitted a list of comments. And Dr. Goddard has attended most of the meetings with Hazen and Sawyer.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
No, so I think, if they are available next month, I don't think it'll be delaying the project. I think the goal is to get the board comfortable with what they're saying. I think that's what we need to do.
I will ask Hazen and Sawyer to be present next month. I will note that we do have to submit this preliminary engineering report this month.
Okay,
To Renee's concern, would be possible that if they're coming in anyways, to ask them without getting, into the weeds of an all-day session like we did, could they give an overview of what are the other options, to Renee's point, and why we didn't select? Because I have no problem, for my involvement with the option that we selected to move forward with at this point. Obviously, it's a poor decision, but could we get them to give an overview of what the other options were and why they weren't selected, what the differences are, if they're coming in anyways,
Sure. Yeah,
without
well,
going
and I might
through
ask them
the
to
process.
be present through Zoom. That's whatever.
Yeah, I think that's important because I just don't want to, we've had so many problems with this facility. And if we're going to do an upgrade, we need to do it right. And I guess I'm concerned about the fact of the unique situation that we are in that we are not an area in which we're going to be increasing population, and we have all of these basic negativities regarding this region, but we still have this need for this exorbitant, costly infrastructure improvement. And I think it's going to be a hard sell in terms of getting our federal officials and state officials to come up with the capital that we need. So I just want to be sure that we are going to be making the absolute correct choice because we're going to need all the help that we can in order to just, get this money from state, federal, and whomever else in order to pay for this.
Sure, I'll ask Hazen and
Okay,
Sawyer to
thank
come
you.
in to present specifically on, other options reviewed and why not selected.
is there any more questions?
Now tell me, are we going to get a copy of that report, Sean, that's going to be submitted to DEC?
Yes, so I anticipated sending, as I did with the draft, a link. The overall report with appendices is, I don't know, about 560 pages, I think. If any board member would like a hard copy, I'll ask that a hard copy be prepared.
I want one.
Okay.
I won't understand when I'm reading 560 pages. I want to hear it out of someone's mouth where I can sit and listen. We're not engineers.
No one said that we were. However, I
Oh,
would
no,
just
I'm
like to, I
that
I
wasn't
would just like to
negative.
review it and
No,
just see. I know that we're not going to really understand everything, but the thing is that it's not that we cannot understand it or try to learn to understand it. I just think that it's good to see exactly what they are presenting.
Renee, that
And
was not a negative comment. I was talking about me personally.
all right,
Okay.
okay, just making sure
Yeah.
because
Okay.
the bottom line is that we all want the same thing.
I agree.
Yeah, I would, it's not a question, Sean, but I would underscore and agree with Renee's, concerns. I think, I think the right choice was selected, but I think that having them explain why would probably, be a good next step without holding up the process.
Sure, I'm sure they'd be happy to present to the board.
Okay. Are we
I
good?
appreciate it. It'll be helpful in bringing me up to speed as well. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, if we're all done here, you ready?
That's all for me this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Finance, Deborah Ziolkowski. Good evening, Debbie.
So what I've been working on for the past couple months actually is the bank reconciliation. So the bank reconciliations have not been done for a year. So I've been going through, I've completed 6 of the more complex ones, or 3 really complex and 3 that are just kind of just simple. And right now I'm working through the depository, which is like a lot of activity because it's everybody's payments coming in. And it's been going well, but I've had to make some journal entries. Some journal entries have not been posted. So it's just time consuming, just going through and making sure everything ties out. And aside from that, I've also been working with Tyler payments for the conversion with the Liberty, for the Lighthouse, and the payments with the merchant account affiliated with Niagara Falls Water Board. And right now we're looking at 2 to 3 weeks that they're going to take to create the merchant account for us. So then after that, they're going to reach back out, and then we're going to get working on actually all the processes related to doing the conversion. But I was happy that that's still moving forward. And then in addition, we have the audit that is going to be coming in April. So I did not feel comfortable having them come out just yet, because again, I'm working through the bank reconciliation. So at the end of April 20th is when we're looking to have them come in. But so far, everything is making sense. Everything looks good. Just need to get through these bank reconciliations.
Yeah, you're starting behind the 8 ball, trying to correct things that you weren't even here. So we understand that. And we thank you for what you're doing. And is there any questions for Debbie?
Just in general, are you comfortable with the timeframes, deadlines you have to meet? I mean, the Lighthouse thing, I don't know if it's quite the deadline per se, but estimate time. And the audit thing, are you comfortable with the amount of work that your department has to, can accomplish by that time? Do you have everything you need to get there?
I do feel comfortable because like along the way, I've been delegating some of the work that was done previously in my position. I've been delegating it to staff. I've given little bits and pieces away, which has definitely given me more time to focus on the audit and the conversion for Tyler. So I do feel comfortable. And then it's just, taking that time away to teach other people how to do some of my responsibilities just takes a little bit of time, but I do feel comfortable. I'm not going to have the auditors come in unless I am like really, really comfortable and I feel like we have something to provide them.
All right. It's good that the staff in your, under you in the org chart, are you happy with their involvement with, they embrace the changes you're making, and, it's a new change for them too, or is it all that, are you comfortable with how all that's going?
I am, and with any kind of change, you're going to have some individuals that are resistant to it. So I've been able to successfully navigate through that. It's just what you would see in an average place. Some people like it, some people don't.
Yeah.
But generally, it has been well received. A lot of people generally want to help, and they feel like they can take things off my plate that you know, they have the capacity to do it, they have the interest to do it. And it's exciting because you see people using like Excel more than they've been using it in the past, and they're embracing it. Things that they're doing, I'm asking them to do, are similar to some of the job duties that they already do. So they're like, oh yeah, I already am familiar with this, like with some of the sewer charges and chemical charges. So it's, you know, putting it with the individual that can handle it better, that it fits their position. So it's been well received for the most part.
Or any resources you need to make that continue to happen, you know, Sean and the rest of us are here to help you with that. Let's know.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions for Debbie?
Okay,
Thank you, Deb.
you're welcome.
Administrative Services, Caleb Holman.
Good evening.
Good evening, Caleb.
For trainings this month, we held safety trainings conducted by Winkosh for occupational stress on February 17th at the water plant and February 19th at the wastewater plant. On our personnel actions and report, we are recommending a permanent employment for the foreman position. And if approved, we are recommending hiring a CDT team lead.
Okay. Is there a motion for number one, CDT leader?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Yeah, so,
Second, any discussion on it? Roll call, Sean?
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yes.
Chairman Siriani?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Item number two, is there a motion for a CDT team leader to form it?
I'll make that motion.
Dan, is there a second?
Second.
Jim, is there any discussion on it?
sorry, what exactly is this doing? I just want to be clear.
It's promoting a CDT team leader to foreman
Okay.
From the civil service.
Yeah.
We had the examination and we have a passing.
Got it. Okay. I'm good.
Roll call, Sean?
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yes.
Chairman Siriani?
Yes,
Motion passes.
okay. Thank you, Caleb. I also want to congratulate all the people that have, you know, the focus of the board for the last couple of years has been qualified people, civil service tests, and we're getting several people that are passing these tests, including Mike Eagler and a number of other ones, and we appreciate that. So congratulations on all that has passed these tests.
Congratulations.
Okay. Engineering, Doug Williamson.
Hello, good evening, board.
Evening.
We have two annual reports required by our wastewater treatment plant speedies permit that's due by the end of the week. The first report is a mercury minimization plan. It monitors the influent mercury concentrations from our significant industrial users and also the wastewater leaving our plant. Our current final effluent limit is 50 nanograms per liter, and we haven't violated that since 2017. So overall, the plant's performing pretty well. We've only had 2 alpha BHC violations in the past year. And it's only basically due to them lowering our limits from a 0.04 to a 0.01. Because at a 0.04, we'd have 0 violations. So I won't talk about PER, but I have certain feelings about it. Also due by the end of the month, or the end of the month, I have to complete the pollutant minimization plan annual report, monitors influent and effluent pollutant concentrations for hexachlorobenzene, Myrex, DDD, DDE, and DDT. And we haven't had any recent violations recently of those pollutants. Last week we had Encoris perform an ultrasonic thickness survey and a 30-inch cast iron backwash header pipe located in the basement of the carbon building. Basically, it's a corroded section of piping. It's about 20 feet long, elevated about 8 feet. We're going to receive a report from them soon, letting us know if the piping is fit for continued service. Also calculate the remaining life of the pipe and let us know what repairs may be necessary. And I'm letting you know this now because if there is a repair necessary, we'll probably have to submit a quote for resolution to repair next month. Other than that, water main project, Laughlin Drive, Whitcup Avenue, 5th Street Loop, that's been approved a while ago, and we're hoping to put that out to bid soon.
Are there any questions for Doug? Thank you,
Okay,
Doug.
thanks.
Thank you.
Outside infrastructure updates, Mike Igler Senior.
Good evening. Outside of our typical weather, with the main breaks we're having, we're experiencing more frozen lines and burst pipes in homes than usual. So we've been responding to those calls. Being in fake walls and stuff like that has been causing an issue. We have to respond because a lot of these homes do not have functioning wheel valves in the basement. And most times by the time we get the call, there's a couple feet of water in the basement. So our main breaks from last year are down compared to the year before, but our frozen line, burst pipes in homes and valves are up from the year before. This past week, to add to the joy of the main breaks, we experienced a rain event that lasted a couple days with us bypassing. We usually get this in the March with the thaw and the rain, but this is earlier, and this one lasted longer than usual, but it ended on Saturday, so I'm happy to say that that's finally done and closed out. Doug had brought up Whitcup and Laughlin project, as well as West River Shore and the sewer project on Calumet. These are three substantially construction that's going to take place this summer. So it's going to be a busy summer, but these three projects right here, if we could get them off and done by the end of summer, that would help us in the future immensely. Tomorrow, the board back in October, November, approved a new SCADA system for our lift stations. We had training last week. It's starting to be migrated over tomorrow. I know it's pretty sad, but I'm excited about it for the fact that this not only gives us wet weather, so in the case of a wet weather event, it's just a one button push now. I know I spoke about that in the past, but we have it now where anybody go on, set the wet weather, okay?
We don't work in your department. I know we did cover it, but can you just briefly
Sure.
remind us what that does?
When we have wet weather coming, our pumps, we have a lead and a lag pump. Lead comes on, lag comes in to help it out. There's too much. In wet weather, we make the lead and lag operate simultaneously to get more water out of the lift station. The more water we could get out of the lift station faster, the better it is on the homeowners in the LaSalle area. You don't want to keep it lead and lag running at the same time because it beats up your pumps. There's a lot of on and off starts. We only do this in wet weather events, significant weather events where we have to get the water out of those lift stations so we could take more in. So that's the wet weather. We also, and I know Rick Roll, a name that was brought up by Sean, is very interested in SCADA when it comes to some of their projects. With this new SCADA system, it's going to give us live weather right on SCADA, which wastewater treatment plant operators can see. So they're going to see wind direction, precipitation, as well as a forecast, a 24-hour forecast. What that allows us to do, particularly the wind, there's certain times in the year where the wind blows and it pushes the river back up the Little Niagara River, which causes Cayuga Island to flood. At this point, we gamble, we think we know the wind speed and what it's going to be. But now with this, we could plot the weather events. And as we move forward and we get enough history on it, we'll know that we could start, we'll call it the Cayuga Island Protocol, where we'd go and close the valves on Cayuga Island on Joliet to prevent the water being pushed back up into the streets. So very excited about the weather part of this. So like I said, it starts tomorrow. We're looking at a week to 10 days of using both systems to make sure we're comfortable with it, but tomorrow's the start of the new SCADA system. And that's all I have, right? Nothing more.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank your crew. I was out there at one time and they're working out in 0-degree temperature. So you tell them the board really appreciates. I know it's their job, but still tough to work outside 8 hours at a time in 0 degrees. So we do appreciate that. Now, just a question on, we've had a lot of pipe breaks.
Mhm.
And probably the vast majority is outside, old infrastructure. But
Yeah.
I did some research within the county. Have we ever looked at, these big water towers?
Yes.
They have found in other areas in the county, if there was too much pressure coming through them, that it would cause these pipes to break. And when they corrected that pressure, some of the pipes stopped breaking. Have we heard of this or?
This is only my opinion. I believe the level in our water tower, and I may be mistaken, the level in our water tower has a direct impact, particularly in the winter, of our mains breaking. I have nothing, I just experience, time of day when the main breaks happen. A lot of main breaks happen overnight and when our tank is most full. I would encourage, and I know Sean and Rob Rowe, are looking into it or maybe looking into it. So it's just from what I see in the field. But I do agree that I believe the pressure coming out of the tank has a direct impact on the mains. During the day, very seldom. I shouldn't say seldom. During the day, we experience, from what I see, less main breaks. And then later in the day that we get these bigger main breaks. I know the main break in Niagara Falls Boulevard came about because of a sensor problem. I knew we had water in the tank. It made me nervous the night before that we may experience something. I have no proof that it's correlated to the main break on Niagara Falls Boulevard. It's just what I've been through. But I know Sean, and with the new tank, the tank project, they're talking about putting valves on, pressure leak valves and stuff like that. More people smarter than myself would have a better answer. Through experience, yes, I do agree that the pressure in the tank has something to do with our main striker.
Okay, as long as we know about it and we do some research to see if it can be corrected.
We will have more options to manage system pressure when the Beach Avenue tank is back online with the pump station,
Okay,
but that's a ways out.
okay,
And if there's one more thing, if I might add.
yes,
The people who work the after-hour shifts, water treatment plant operators, as well as the personnel that takes the phone calls during the day, I would like to thank them. I believe they have a thankless job. I believe they get yelled at by what we do or what we fail to do. The girls up front as well as the operators at night. So I just wanted the board to know that the outside maintenance department is very appreciative of what the water treatment plant operators do after hours, as well as the personnel up front. I know we get thanked for, doing our jobs and all that, but I would like to draw attention to the jobs that they do that really never get recognized. So they are a key part of us keeping the water flowing out there in the field. Okay?
yeah, well, we can thank everyone because maintenance
Good point.
does their part. Cleaners do their part.
Yep.
All the office staff, everyone in this room does a part, but we do appreciate your statement.
So
Anything
Two
else?
of the most visible department in the city. I think it's also the most challenging for a wide variety of reasons, some of which the chairman just identified. I agree with, we all do, but it's not arguable, you have the most visible department for residents. So for that reason alone, we want to make sure that you guys have everything you need.
I think the chairman said it perfect. All of us mean something to do something here. So if we lose anybody, it's gonna hurt us.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any more questions? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mr. Elton, you're up. Information and Operations Technology.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're actively working on deploying new network switches. We're, doing these deployments. Mostly they're scheduled during, off hours. That way we can avoid any, network inconveniences, to daily operations. Number two, critical equipment at the wastewater treatment plants are currently on, old UPSs. And as a precautionary measure, we're actively working to obtain, new and better UPS systems to ensure that our critical equipment and servers stay online in the event of our power grid having any issues. Also, we are testing and evaluating our new SCADA platform for the water treatment plants, which will provide notable cost savings and also improved efficiency. Last item on the list, we've heard back from National Grid regarding the installation of a security camera at the gorge, and we are currently waiting on a private agreements for review and approval.
Are there any questions for Elton? Thank you, young man. January 26 Operations and Maintenance Report. Nothing, John?
Not unless there are any questions, Mr. Chairman. I will note that included in the packet is an activity report from E3 Communications, which I intend to be a monthly feature. So the board is apprised of our, the major efforts towards obtaining funding for these, for our various system needs, not just the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, then let's go to resolutions.
The first resolution is found at page 38 of the agenda packet. Resolution number 2026-02001, procurement of gas chromatograph for halo acetic acid analysis.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Jim, is there a second? Second. Any discussion on it? Roll call.
Sorry, Chairman, you just briefly explain what that is, Sean?
Sure. This is an instrument that the lab uses for analysis of haloacetic acids, which are essentially disinfection byproducts. One of the EPA drinking water regulations is related to those disinfection byproducts that happen as a result of the interaction between chlorine and bacteria in the water. They limit how much you can dose at a given time of chlorine. So it's, part of the maintaining that delicate balancing act between adequate disinfection and avoiding negative health effects from over use of chlorine or other disinfectants. We use chlorine here. The requirement is that we do a certain number of these analyses per quarter, and this instrument is what we use to do that. We also use this, we generate a little bit of revenue to offset some of our lab costs by doing some of these haloacetic acid analysis for other municipalities in the area. We charge them a little bit less than what a commercial lab would charge. So we generate a little bit of revenue. The annual revenue from the lab for this and other analytical work that we do for other municipalities is about 20,000 a year, but it's still a meaningful, sum for equipment that we need to have anyway. So we might as well employ it as usefully as possible.
Is this replacing a piece of equipment or buying something we don't currently have?
It's a replacement for our existing Shimadzu unit, which is at the end of its service life. Parts are becoming difficult to find, and there's just continual operating issues that we've had to call Shimadzu for. So since this is a critical piece of equipment, we're asking the board to approve its replacement. We are looking at, this is for an Agilent gas chromatograph, which is a different brand than Shimadzu. Our lab staff believe that Agilent is just a better option right now than Shimadzu with chromatographs. And it's also available for purchase through the New York State Office of General Services contract. Moving forward, we also need a replacement gas chromatograph with additional features, the name of which is slipping from my mind. That particular instrument is over $100,000. We've obtained a quote, but we intend to include that in our WIA, so Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant application later this year. And that doesn't need immediate replacement, but it's also sort of on the list, and, you know, we're able to plan ahead for that one. This failure happened, you know, has been failing frequently in recent weeks and months, so we can't really delay its replacement.
Let's do it.
Any more discussion on it? Roll call.
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yes.
Chairman Siriani?
Yes.
Motion passes. The next resolution is found beginning at page 47 of the agenda packet. Resolution number 2026-02002, renewal of Neptune 360 meter data management, 3 years of service.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Jim, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Renee, open for discussion? Roll call, Sean?
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yes.
Chairman Siriani?
Yes.
Motion passes. The next resolution is found beginning at page 51 of the agenda packet, resolution number 2026-02003, award bid for emergency repair contract.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Jim, is there a second?
Second.
Matt, any discussion on it? Roll call, Sean?
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yes.
Chairman Siriani?
Yes.
Motion passes. The next resolution is found beginning at page 56 of the agenda packet, change order 1 and final for J.R. Swanson contract for 15-inch sanitary sewer replacement, 600 block of 88th Street. The resolution number is 2026-02004.
Is there a motion?
Move it.
Renee, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Jim, second. Roll call, Sean? No, wait, is there any discussion on it? Roll call, Sean?
Board Member Cole?
Yes.
Board Member Dean?
Yes.
Board Member Kimball?
Yes.
Board Member Weiss?
Yeah.
Chairman Siriani?
Yes.
Motion passes. The final resolution in the agenda packet is found at page 58, resolution 2026-02005, zero cost change order for J.R. Swanson contract for 10-inch sanitary sewer replacement, 78th Street and Lindbergh Avenue.
Is there a
Move it.
motion? Renee moved it. Is there a second? I second it. Any discussion on it?
Yeah, just one question. On the change order. I mean, this was for, is there some reason why we didn't know how far the break was? I mean, when they bid it, wasn't the bidding documents just fix it?
Is this for 88th Street?
He's asking about
78.
88th Street, yes.
78th and Lindbergh.
78?
No, so he's asking a question about the 88th Street resolution. That's the one where there was a cost. So,
We're on page 57, right? It says 78th Street in Lindbergh.
but that one that's a zero cost change order. That one is where we encountered a lead water service line. And the overall cost didn't increase because quantities were less than estimated for other bid items. The preceding resolution about the
Okay,
15-inch repair on 88th Street, that's where we paid an additional $7,500.
all right, I'm good. For the lead line, I'm good.
No, well, no, so this $7,500 was not the lead line. The lead line, we got essentially for the same contract price because some of the other bid items weren't used. So thanks to Mike's negotiation in the field, the contractor agreed, okay, we didn't use some of these quantities, we'll replace the lead line,
Okay.
clean wash. For the 88th Street contract, the bid document was prepared based on linear feet and the anticipated linear feet. But of course, the conditions under the ground weren't known until they started excavating. And once they got down to the break, they discovered that they had to go an additional 3 feet of 15-inch pipe, plus all the required backfill and additional excavation to make the repair. And Mr. Eagler can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's just a consequence of not being able to see the exact dimensions of the break from the ground without excavating.
Okay. Yeah, that's. All right, I got the resolution. Confused, but I understand. Thank you.
Any more discussion on it? Roll call, Sean.
Board Member Cole,
Yes.
Board Member Dean,
Yes,
Board Member Kimball,
Yes,
Board Member Weiss,
Yes.
Chairman Siriani.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Is there any unfinished or old business? Any new business or additional items for discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
move it.
Renee, is there a second? Matt? Roll call, Sean?
Board Member Cole,
Yes.
Board Member Dean,
yes.
Board Member Kimball,
Yes.
Board Member Weiss,
Yes.
Chairman Siriani.
Yes.
Thank you all. Know for the recording, the time is 6:10 PM.
Thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you in the audience too.
Thank you.